Hi, namaste, masters. Good evening, good morning to all of you. Welcome to our PMC USA Book Club session 3 today. Today also happens to be Mahavatar Babaji's birthday, November 30th. So let's start with 10 minutes meditation, thinking about this ageless guru. I've heard and read a lot about Mahavatar Babaji's in autobiography of Yogi and by Yogananda Paramhamsa. So he has propagated like Kriya Yoga, and he's been found in Himalayas by a lot of our gurus in India. He's been referred multiple times. He's also referred to as Avatar of Shiva. So it's really an auspicious day. So let's meditate for 10 minutes, and then we'll resume our book club discussions. Okay, so close your eyes and sit in a comfortable position. Cross your feet, hold your fingers. Close your eyes and we'll play the music. So let's meditate. Focus on your breathing.
So already I shared music. Can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear Sirisha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Focus on your breathing. Relax yourself. Calm your mind. Calm your body, calm your thoughts. Just focus on your normal, natural breath. Let's all connect to Mahavatar Babaji's consciousness. Okay, masters, gently rub your palms, close your eyes. Put them on your eyes and slowly open your eyes. All right, that was nice. So, with Mahavatar Babaji's blessings and Patriji's, let's start today's discussions. So, are you able to see my screen? Okay.
Yes, Radhika ji.
Yeah. Okay. So today we will discuss. So we've been, as all of you know, we've been discussing about this book, amazing, marvelous piece of work. You're the Placebo, Making Your Mind Matter by Dr. Joe Dispenza. So we've discussed 2 sessions, and today will be our 3rd session. And we are going to do chapter 4 and 5. And here is what we will do today. So we will review last week's, what we learned, what we read in the book. And then this week, the placebo effect in the body and how thoughts change the brain and the body. And then we'll discuss a little bit. So from last week, we learned about what is the placebo effect and a little bit history of that. So placebo effect is basically, it is something that you think, take in and you think about, you expect it to heal. Say it could be like a pill or water, whatever it could be, then you think that it will heal and it will heal. So that is the placebo effect. So we learned a little bit like how these were all like in the history, where like one of the military's doctor had to give saline injections because when he ran out of morphine painkiller, and how he was able to heal the soldiers from reduce their pain instead of real painkiller. And we also saw some like miraculous stories of healing in Bible, and we saw faith healing by many people around the world. Like in our own country in India, we've seen Satya Sai Baba with Vibhuti, sacred ash. A lot of people can heal a lot of illnesses, and so it's the what that person needed at that moment, and if that is given to that person or the person thinks about it, the conditions, it will help that person heal. So there is a from the thought, the power of thought itself, the body is healing. And then we saw evidences in like even hypnotism, and there were some other Vietnamese studies and Tibetan studies where we saw how mind over body connection, how the mind can influence the body and we can heal. And we also learned about anatomy of thought, and how you saw that like if we had same choices, same thoughts, same actions, same emotions, we would be in the same state of being. So in order for us to change, you will have the same results, but if you want expect some other results, something different, then you have to do different actions, different thinking, different. So we saw that whole flow chart of how the thought works and how the state of being can change to new self by just changing your thoughts and actions and, feeling emotions. And so that was all like how the placebo effects in the brain. And also we learned about how neural networks are activated by thinking, like not just within that, outside the box. So let's see a little bit more. Before I go, do you guys have anything to discuss? Any questions? I see Rupa. I see Indra today, Deepika. Have you guys read the book? And do you have anything to discuss from chapter 2 and 3? All right. So I'll take that as a no. Let's continue today, and then we can come back and discuss a little bit more. So demystifying DNA. So there is always this misconception, like a lot of people believe that we all have some genetic destiny, like so if our father, grandfather, or mothers are like this, we will be like that. So it's like we have this notion of genetic destiny. We think that we have inherited the genes for certain, like breast cancer, and then even diabetes, heart disease, whatever, sickle cell, Down syndrome. We always think that, okay, they're passed on in genes and we are bound to get, but it's actually not true. I know the genes inherit, but they can actually alter. So the gene can be altered, and you can either have them turned on or turned off. So we'll learn more about all that in a couple of slides. So it's just that we are not bound to our genes. We don't think that we are limited to what we got in our genes. We can always alter our genes. We can always alter based on the behaviors or actions you take or the experiences you go through. You can always change the genes. And it's not even like it doesn't take long also. We'll see in the research, like within minutes also the genes can be altered. So that's really like powerful to learn that the DNA is basically the sequence of genes. If you think about like a ladder, it is present in every cell, and that's how it looks. And these nucleic acids are all billions, actually. There's billions of them, and every cell has these DNA, and the set of nucleic acids is called a gene. So the sequence of like series of some genes is called nucleic acids is called a gene.
Sorry for interruption, Radhika ji. So some voice is not clear. Some background noise is there. Yeah,
Is it better now?
No, not. Some noise is coming.
Okay. Is it from my computer?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to. I guess it is the CPU.
Oh, okay.
Or
but we can hear you. But
okay, I might just come a little bit closer and speak to the mic.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So yeah, a lot of misconception is that we cannot change our genes, but it's really not true. So let's learn a little bit more about. So this is the cell. It's like almost like a biology lesson, but that's the thing about this book. Like he talks a lot about science as like the proof, giving proof to some of the concepts Dr. Joe Dispenza tries to explain to us. So here, this is the picture of a cell, And if you can think about, in the center is where you will see these chromosomes. We call them DNA chromosomes. And then when you blow up the picture, it'll be like that ladder. And then in between are these nucleic acids that are connected. And then some sequence of like little bit portion of it is one gene. So, and then you'll see nucleus, and then, yeah, so this is the cell membrane, and we have billions of cells. And so inside each one we have, so they were giving some estimations, like if you stretch this DNA, it will be 6 feet long. And if
Sorry for interruption, Radhika ji. Someone can't hear you. So can you use headphones? Will you try headphones once?
Okay, yeah, I can. 1 second. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay.
Can you switch on your video? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Can you see the slide?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Maybe it's a Setiraj, it's your side, it's problem. I think we are all hearing. Yeah. So,
Who is that? Seturaj? Oh,
yeah.
Indra Seturaj. Okay. Okay. All right. So as I was saying, the dimensions of the DNA, they were saying that if just from one cell you took out the DNA and you stretched it, it would be 6 feet long. And if you took out the DNA from all the cells in our body, and it would be like as much as you go to the sun and come back, and it's 150 times of that much distance. But then if you took out DNA of all the 7 billion people on the planet and scrunched it together, it would fit in a space as small as grain of rice. So they're really minute, but they're large number. They're in large number. So, and then, so we have different kinds of cells in our body, like muscle cells, skin cells, immune cells, and each of these cells create what are called proteins. And the protein is derived from a Greek word called protas, which is of meaning primary importance. So proteins are very important for our body, and every cell creates a different kind of protein. So for example, muscle cells create actin and myosin, skin cells create collagen and elastin, immune cells create antibodies, thyroid cells, thyroxine, eye cells, keratin, bone marrow cells, hemoglobin, pancreatic cells create like enzymes called protease, lipase, and amylase. So we just know that how important these proteins are for our functioning. And so these, basically the proteins are the expressions of life and the health of our bodies. So if the creation of all these things is happening correctly, everything is, so the body is in harmony. So we, that's the idea of, I mean, that's the importance of proteins. So they help us digest the food, control the immune system, heal our wounds, and catalyze chemical reactions, and they support the integrity of our bodies. So these are essential. Basically, they are the expressions of life. Any questions so far? Is it better now?
It's perfect. It's clear.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so let's go to the next slide. So, like we already talked about earlier in 1970s and 1950s, they were like, okay, genes, we have these many number of genes, this is fixed. So they were saying that there's like, because a human body could manufacture about 140,000 different types of proteins. So the scientists thought that there were 140,000 genes. But then later on, like 40 years later, they were surprised to find out that there were only 23,000 genes, 23,688. So what they learned basically was like, we have these genes which are basically turned on and off based on the situations. So, and also based on the environment factors. So that was a very great like discovery that, so there's almost like there is about 1.90% of the genes, 95% of DNA is unused. We are only using 1.5 DNA. So there's so much DNA, there is so much power that you can turn on and off. And that, so it is also called as expressing or suppressing. By expressing or suppressing, you can achieve much more in your body than what you thought was possible. So we always thought that dyslexia, ADD, or whatever, Down syndrome, sickle cell anemia, they're all passed through the genes, but it is not actually. So 95% of these people who develop these conditions are basically by lifestyle and behavior and not because of the genes. So there could be 5% chances, but then, so the real question is like whether or not any gene we might be carrying has been expressed yet or not. So that's what is called as turning on and off of the gene. And so like how we have the Christmas tree lights going on and off based on something and in synchronous, that's how you can imagine the genes going on and off based on the conditions, external. So there could be either environment conditions or inside the body, environment conditions inside the body, like emotions, biological, neurological, mental, energetic, or even spiritual states of being. Based on that, the genes can be altered, and also sometimes outside the environment, like trauma, temperature, altitude, toxins, bacteria, viruses, food, alcohol, so on. So all these factors can have effects on your genes, how you can use them. Basically, you have a bit of control. That's what we're learning. So, and these are classified by different type, like experience dependent or activity dependent or behavioral state dependent. So, and then when they turn on, there is certain proteins that are created, and these proteins help stem cells. We'll learn about the stem cells, which will morph into whatever types of cells are needed at the time of the healing for the body. So, and it is also that scientists believe that genetic expression fluctuates on a moment-to-moment basis. So based on our thoughts and feelings or our activities, our choices, behavior, we have profound healing and regenerative effects on our bodies. It's not like it can be as low as like a week or like 30 minutes, So for example, you can think about like, so if you have anxiety, for example, today I was feeling a little bit, and then I already feel like heat in my face. So that's like physiological change, biological change in my body responding to the anxiety, the stress. So that's how much connection we have between the mind and the body. Yeah, basically how they're affected, again, like we talked about, all these emotional and then mental. So when you're interacting with families or friends, co-workers, or spiritual practices, they can be affected. So somebody might say some encouraging things and you'll feel all happy, and if somebody was criticizing or judging you or something, then you would be like feeling low. Or so all these external factors have some effects on the how you feel and how your body reacts and how your brain reacts. So yeah, 90% of the genes are engaged in cooperation with signals from the body. So now that you have all these power, can we do everything possible to maximize our health and minimize our dependence on the prescription pad? So instead of depending on medicine, that you have the power to heal. Your mind and your thoughts have the power to heal. So that's what the author says. Can you do everything possible to maximize our health and minimize the prescription pad? So genes contribute to our characteristics, but they do not determine them. So that's the main. So the like the beliefs, the prayers, thoughts, the intentions, faith, all that we have are strongly correlated with our health, longevity, happiness, than our genes do. So there's more to our bodies than just a sack of bones and flesh. So there's more to our genes than just some stored information. You can harness the power of genes. So any questions so far? So here, the author talks about how it is actually what is happening in the gene expression, what is involved in the process of the gene being expressed. When we say the gene is active, or when we say it is suppressed or activated, what happens? So if you see in the first picture is basically the cell that we saw earlier, but there is a chemical message. So that is the factor, or that it could be a thought, it could be some either internal or external condition that changed. That's the chemical message. So when that comes in, it selects the gene. So it's like, imagine like you're in a library and you're selecting a book. So that's how it goes inside the DNA and it selects the gene. And then that opens. So it opens and creates the proteins, reads the gene, and then protein then makes RNA. So reading the gene, once it opens, unzip, it's like unzipping. That's like you're opening the book. You selected a book from the library of books and you're reading that book. So that is how you're activating the gene. Based on a certain trigger, you're able to turn on certain genes. So, and then the RNA, whatever is, when you unzip it, the protein is produced. That's how the proteins are produced, which will in turn help in various functions of your body. So this is the biology of the, yeah, like I was telling you earlier, it's almost like biology lessons. So this was another picture that I thought was explaining, like if you see on the bottom, this pink thing, there is no, so it is not accessible. The DNA is not accessible, so the gene is not active. So when it is active, it opens up. So when there is a epigenetic factor, we call all this, the modification of these genes is called as epigenetic. So we'll see that in the next picture, next slide. But this epigenetic factor, when it happens, is when it opens that DNA and the gene is accessible. So this is the how you can, I thought this was a good picture to show. So, okay. Any questions so far? What do you all think about what you're hearing so far? Is it eye-opening, or did you all also believe that you cannot change the genes? I used to think. Okay. So let's move on then. Epigenetics, how we mere mortals get to play God. So it's a nice title. It's almost like play God in the sense you have the control. So that's what we are saying, that how we can do this. So what happens? So epigenetics is literally, it just means that about the gene. So you can, there is something that you can modify the gene basically. So that is all the study of modification of these genes and behavior of how this gene can be altered, and all that study is called as epigenetics. And even though our DNA code never changes, the thousands of combinations, sequences, and pattern variations in the single gene are possible. So the way they are connected can change in millions of ways, the sequence, anything. So the DNA might be the same, but how they're sequenced is different. So best example was like identical twins. So if you take twins, if we think about twins, they have the same genes too, right? They have the same DNA. They're born. So what they did was, there were several studies that they did with twins, and as they grow up, so even though there were more similarities when they were younger, because as they grew older, they were all like, because they were in totally different situations, different conditions, they're brought up in different environments. They saw that there were almost like 4 times as many differentially expressed genes between 50-year-old twins and 3-year-old twins. So it clearly shows that it's not in the DNA. So it's also like analogy, like where you can say they're born, DNA is like computer. You're born with that DNA, but then so person using a computer, you can keep downloading different software. So one person has totally different software, the other person keeps on downloading different set of software. So that is what is the epigenetic variations. Analogy is like, okay, this person could have different gene expressions and the other person. So they're totally 2 different people. And so that is an analogy where DNA stays the same, but depending on what software person has downloaded, what the computer does, the way it operates can be totally different. So there's also another study where in just 3 months, almost like 31 men with low-risk prostate cancer were able to upregulate 48 genes, mostly dealing with tumor suppression, and downregulate 453 genes dealing with tumor promotion. So by following an intensive nutrition and lifestyle regimen. So there were like a lot of studies like this. There's a few more that the book talks about. There was a Swedish study where 23 overweight healthy men who went from being relatively sedentary to attending spinning and aerobics classes, an average of just under twice per week. Researchers found that the men had epigenetically altered 7,000 genes, almost 30% of all the genes in the entire human genome. So they can be that quick and that effective, the gene expression. So how we experience and how we assign meaning to these experiences is how you can activate the genes. So yeah, any questions so far? Okay, so let's move on. So the way how you can activate, you can also be deactivating a lot of sequence of genes and proteins. And so, for example, the stress that we have keeps us living in survival mode. Stress actually helps. It was like earlier, stress was useful for human beings. That's how it is. Human body, for example, you're like falling off of a cliff, or you're like chased by pack of wolves, or so that time you're producing the adrenaline that you need action to to respond to these emergency situations. But in modern days, what's happening is there is this constant stress. This is not going. So I mean, if it was temporary, and then the human body reacts, and that was fine, adaptive. But now we have this constant physical stress. It could be trauma, chemical stress, toxins, emotional, like fear, overwhelm, whatever. All these things are knocking your body out of balance. So they're permanently changing the genes, and they're shutting off a lot of genes completely. So we are constantly in either fight or flight mode. So what is happening is your human body is spending more time in fighting these things rather than time for it to create growth or nurture. So there's no time. It's like almost like a country where 90%, 98% of your budget is spent on defense. And so there is only like, 2%, 5% left for like libraries or roads or anything that needs more, like buildings, schools. There's no budget for important things where you need resources you don't have. So that's what is happening with our day-to-day lives in this modern age, where all these stresses are not helping us to be creative, and because of how the science is working. So yeah, we have this constant, you have arguments with your spouse, or there's some credit card bill, or there's some big presentation, pressure of giving that big presentation, work, whatever. So all these constantly are creating stress hormones in our body. And so it's like almost constant basis. So remembering past stressful experiences and thinking about our past, anticipating the future situations. All these repetitive short-term stresses also blur together and they become long-term stress. And this is our living in survival mode in our 21st century. So there's very little vital energy that's left, and it is lost in the system. So that's why we have all this meditation and things like that that is helping us with stress reduction. So yeah, any questions so far? So I mean, from this is like end of this chapter. So we do realize that we indeed have some degree of control over our own genetic engineering. So we can engineer our genes by the way of our thoughts, choices, behaviors, experiences, and emotions. So like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, I don't know how many of you have seen, who had the power, she saw it all along, but she didn't know she had it. So it's almost like that. We possess a power that we may not have previously realized was ours. So the key that can set us free of being chained to the limitations of our own genetic expressions. So this next chapter is it's going into how thoughts can change the brain and the body. So okay. So it talks about, there's something called mental rehearsal. Mental rehearsal is basically imagining something, thinking about something that is going to happen, but you're playing it over in your mind. It's almost like a movie that plays, but the movie that plays in your mind, and you're visualizing something, you're thinking about something. That is all is called mental rehearsal before it even happens. So that's why it is called rehearsal. So you're practicing it before that real show. That is what is the mental rehearsal. So like we've seen a lot of examples with mental rehearsals, like how there were some successes. So one of this Russian guy, Anatoly Sharansky, he was in, I think, 1980s. He was arrested for spying. And so when he was in the jail in 6 months imprisonment or whatever, he was playing chess again in his mind. So he was playing the mental chess against himself every day. He was practicing so many moves. And so once he was out of the jail and he had become like Israeli cabinet minister, and then he there was this world chess champion, Garry Kasparov, who came to Israel in 96. And Sharansky participated with him, and he was able to defeat that world champion. So even though it was all like he was anticipating that certain move, and he saw it, and then he was able to. So that how powerful that mental rehearsing is. You don't have to actually do it, but you still can. Same thing like this guy called Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers. I'm not sure football players here might know. So he imagines all these moves in his head that he often like would play the same moves in the field. So he would be watching TV, or he would be doing other things, but he's always thinking about these different moves, how he could do what he could do in the field, and he actually does those in the field, and he would succeed. He would get, I think they were like Super Bowl champions in 2011, and so that's what he told them, that he almost he was able to get like 31 out of 36 passes. It's like 86%, fifth best completion. And also famous like golfers, Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus, and this basketball player, Michael Jordan. They always had these, where the ball is going, how he's hitting, where it would go in that green golf field, and how it will go in that hole. So he would imagine all those things, and they would actually play those shots on the golf field. Same thing with Michael Jordan. So, and he has, they're all world famous athletes, professional athletes. And also interesting story from Jim Carrey, as you know, the famous actor, Hollywood actor. So in 1980s, he was a struggling actor in the beginning. So he was always carrying this powerful affirmation with him, which was saying that he wanted to meet about right type of people, getting the right type of acting jobs, working on the right movie with the right casting, and being successful and contributing something worthwhile and making a difference in the world. And that actually happens to him. So he was rehearsing that every day. He had that affirmation. He had written this long paragraph, and he would go through that affirmation every single day. And he also carried a $10 million check that he wrote to himself. And he had written Thanksgiving 1995 and for acting services rendered. And in 1994, he actually had like 3 very hit movies, The Mask and Wet Detective Ace Ventura. And then, so he actually got exactly $10 million check for those movies, and how he had envisioned, that is what happened. So that powerful it is, like, so all these, so your brain cannot distinguish between the actual circumstance or the circumstance that you're imagining. So the brain and your body cannot differentiate. They know, the signals, the neural paths, that neural networks that get activated, they're all same, even though it's happening real or imagination. That is what you have to understand from these things. So there were a couple of other studies also, like where these group of people were asked to do certain little finger exercises. Some were actually doing the little finger exercises. Some were imagining they were doing. So the people who were actually doing increased their strength by 53%, but who were imagining, they increased by 35%. So even though they didn't do anything, their strength of the fingers was increased. That was just amazing. Same thing like biceps. They were flexing the bicep muscle, and they were just imagining. Some were imagining, some were doing actual. So in just few weeks, 13.5% of the bicep muscle was strength was increased by that much. So their bodies are responding to a new mind. So just by thinking that his bicep muscle will be strong, it did become like that. Same thing like in France, there was a French study where the subjects were imagining lifting dumbbells of different weights. Some were imagining they were lifting heavy weights. and activated their muscles, and some were thinking they were lifting lighter weights. So the people who were imagining heavier weights definitely had more strength. So they were able to measurably increase their body strength using only their thoughts. So any questions, anything you guys want to talk about? Have you done anything like this? I'm thinking I should do for my, like, constantly I'll be thinking, oh, I've gained weight. So I should think about in other ways and hopefully slim. So, all right, so next, again, it's similar lines. Yeah, so this is all putting it together, what we read about. Signaling new genes in the body with a new mind. So here, so we're saying thoughts, like exercising different thoughts will activate different neural networks, which will produce neuropeptides and hormones, which will, they act as like epigenetic signals to the cells, and certain cell receptor sites are activated and certain DNA is selected, and then proteins, those proteins are generated, which are nothing but they're helping in your health of your body, expression of life. And so in a nutshell, the next picture shows by healing by thought alone. So the first thing is thought, and at the last you'll see that it's the health of the body. So just by thought alone, you can heal. So that's the whole idea. We just have a few more slides. Okay, stem cells. So stem cells are like, they're like, they can be changed into any cells, basically. They don't have, initially they don't have the functions assigned, but they can renew and they can become, so they can become muscle cells or blood cells or nerve cells, skin cells, liver cells, or intestinal cells. So they can differentiate into any cell by giving them enormous, that's why these are, they have a lot of potential in the regenerative medicine. Because if there was an issue with liver, you would want these stem cells to be morphed as liver cells, so they can replace the damaged liver cells and help the liver recovery. So that is the power of these stem cells. So like we saw earlier, we saw that having a clear intention and thinking about it, nurturing about it, and also associating it with the emotion will produce the right signal, which will activate certain genes and produce certain healthy proteins. And now we are saying that it also makes these brand new health cells from the latent stem cells. So these stem cells can be triggered to become the new cells wherever the body needs. So these latent stem cells will become the healthy cells and help in the healing of certain those parts of the human body. So these have a lot of potential, stem cells. So we come to almost, this is the last slide. Yeah, one thing I wanted to say is like, I think this is the last slide, yeah. Okay, so there was another study. Yeah, there was a study in a monastery where there were 8 men, groups of 8 men who were 70 to 80-year-olds. They were in a retreat for a week. What they did was they recreated all the scenarios in the monastery for them to feel and think that they were 22 years younger. So they had the same TV shows, radio playing with the same old songs that they had when they were 22 years younger. And they had magazines. So everything, the whole scenario was like they were imagining and they were reliving the memories of how they were when they were 22 years younger. So they were in an environment where everything was reminding them of only their earlier age. So when they came out of the retreat, they actually were physically also, they were like their height was a little bit better because their postures improved, all their blood tests, everything was good, and they were feeling and looking like 22 years younger. So that actually all those conditions, environmental conditions, made them look and feel the 22 years younger. So that was an amazing study. And we also read about this Mr. Wright earlier in the chapter 2, I think, where he always, there was a drug that was being tested for the tumor. So he took it, and then the tumor started disappearing. But even though he was taking a placebo, it was not the actual drug. And also, once he learned that the drug was not real, it wasn't effective, again, his tumor started coming back. So it was almost like it wasn't the drug that was miracle. It was almost like he was the miracle, because he was thinking about it. Whatever he thought, his body was becoming that. So there was no placebo, external placebo, but he was the placebo. So that's what we're trying to say here, that this, it is not the external things, it is within you, within your thought, your mind, and your thinking, that you can influence your body. So you are the placebo. That's what the author is trying to say. So what is happening here is we are signaling the gene ahead of the environment. Now we are no longer waiting for the change and hoping for the change. We are the change. So you need to just think like that. You're not waiting on something else. You're not waiting on some other change, but it is, you're the change. Within you is the power. So what reality do you choose to live in, and who you're pretending to be or not to be? Is that simple? The author concludes the chapter 5 with that question. Could that be that simple? So what do you all think? You can unmute and discuss. I think we went over time a little bit, Sirisha. So
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Only just
Yeah. Anybody wants